The morning Andrew came to visit me, I woke up earlier than usual. Dawn was only just stretching its pale fingers across the curtains when I slipped out of bed, wrapped myself in my old quilt, and sat quietly for a moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant chatter of birds outside. My bones ached, as they often did these days, and I moved slowly, but there was a stubbornness in me that refused to surrender completely to frailty. I chose my outfit carefully, though no one else might have thought twice about it. A dusty rose cardigan with mother-of-pearl buttons. Buttons my son used to play with during long church sermons when he was just a restless little boy. I smoothed the cardigan against my thin frame, then slipped on the delicate gold bracelet he had given me at 14, bought with his paper route money. I remembered the way he had grinned when he handed me the little box back then, his cheeks flushed with pride. I studied myself in the mirror, tilting my head left and right, trying to see myself as he might. The mirror was unkind these days. The chemotherapy had stripped me of my hair, leaving only a scalp hidden beneath a silk scarf, burgundy in shade. My face had grown pale and hollow, my body thinner than I liked to admit. Still, behind the scarf and the tired skin, I was his mother. That ought to have meant something. I busied myself in the kitchen, filling a vase with fresh flowers and setting a plate of lemon bars to cool on the counter, his favorite since childhood. I poured tea into the old porcelain set we only used when we had company. I wanted him to feel welcome, to feel at home, to remember. He arrived without calling first. That was Andrew now, confident, impatient, and always in a rush. When the door opened, the scent of expensive cologne drifted into my modest living room, clashing with the warm smell of lemon and sugar. He walked in like he was late for something more important, his shoes clicking against the wood floor. "Hi, Mom," he said, leaning down just enough to kiss my cheek before collapsing onto the edge of the love seat. His suit was sharp, his tie silk, probably costing more than my monthly medication. I smiled, holding the teapot steady as I poured. "You're looking handsome as always." He gave a distracted nod, adjusting his cufflinks. I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes darted to the clock. It was then, as casually as if he were talking about the weather, that he dropped the words that would break me. "Mom, we think it's best if you skip the ceremony." The handle of the teapot burned in my hand. I froze. The words settled in the room like heavy smoke. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice quiet though my heart had already started to sink. Andrew cleared his throat, straightening his tie. "Look, the wedding is going to be very upscale. Very polished. Victoria and I want everything to be flawless for the photographers." I set the teapot down carefully, afraid my trembling hands might spill it. "You don't want your mother in your wedding pictures?" He shifted uncomfortably. "It's not personal, Mom. It's just the headscarf, the weight loss, the coughing. Some of the guests might find it uncomfortable." That word, uncomfortable, struck me harder than a slap. I was no longer his mother. I was an inconvenience. A blemish. Something to hide away. "Andrew," I whispered, feeling my throat tighten. "I raised you alone. I worked 3 jobs so you could have everything you wanted. Surely I can sit quietly in the back." The sound of the door opening cut me off. She walked in then, Victoria. Tall, poised, flawless in the way of women who seemed born for glossy magazines. She looked around my little home as if she'd stumbled into a crime scene. "Oh, this is where you grew up," she said, her voice laced with distaste. "Victoria, this is my mother," Andrew offered weakly. Her eyes flickered toward me, quick and dismissive. "Right, we discussed this, didn't we, babe?" "Victoria," I began, but she raised a hand. "The venue has very specific aesthetic requirements," she said smoothly. "We've finalized seating charts, color schemes, photography angles. I'm sure you understand." "Understand?" I looked at my son, waiting for him to defend me, to remember the woman who had carried him, who had given him every ounce of love she had. But Andrew looked down at his shoes. "She's sick," Victoria continued, speaking of me as though I were a problem to be solved. "The whole fragile cancer patient look, it's going to make people uncomfortable. We want joy celebration. Not this." She waved her manicured hand toward me. Andrew finally spoke. "We can live stream it for you, Mom. You'll see everything from your couch. It'll be like being there." I shook my head. I don't want to watch my son's wedding on a screen. I want to be in the room, where I belong. Victoria's smile sharpened. Actually, we've been discussing your future care needs. After the honeymoon, we should explore some excellent facilities. Clean, professional, specialized care for people in your condition. You mean a nursing home? I said flatly. Don't be dramatic, Andrew snapped. We're being practical. You can't keep guilting me into taking care of you forever. Then, with cruel precision, he delivered the final blow. This is exactly why Dad left you. The silence that followed was absolute. The words echoed in the hollow of my chest, sharper than any knife. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply lowered myself into my chair, my hands trembling in my lap, my tea cooling on the table. The lemon bars sat untouched, their sweetness wasted. Victoria headed for the door, her heels clicking like a gavel. We'll send pictures, she called. Andrew leaned down, pressing his lips against the scarf covering my head. It felt like a gesture at a funeral. Love you, Mom. You know that, right? The door closed behind them, and their luxury car purred down the street, leaving me in the quiet hum of my small house. I stood by the window and whispered into the empty room. Thank you for showing me who you really are. Something inside me shifted then. The sorrow hardened into resolve. My headscarf no longer felt like a shroud of shame, but a crown of survival. I straightened it, held myself tall despite the ache in my bones. I had work to do. That night, I did not cry into my pillow or curse God for my circumstances. Instead, I sat in my armchair beneath the quilt I had stitched when Andrew was in grade school, and I planned. The house seemed alive around me, as if waiting for a reckoning. My mind wandered through years of sacrifice, overtime shifts, nights with nothing but canned soup for dinner, scrubbing church floors on weekends so Andrew could have guitar lessons. I had carried his dreams on my back, believing that one day, my love and labor would be enough. But now he had shown me the truth, and it was time to show him mine. I rose slowly, every joint aching, and made my way to the bedroom. In the back of the closet, behind winter coats, sat an old safe. I turned the dial, the familiar click of numbers unlocking a hidden world. Inside lay documents that told a story Andrew had never cared to ask about. Property deeds, investment statements, partnership papers, bank records. For decades, while he believed I was scraping by, I had quietly built a fortune. The first property had come when Andrew was 12, an elderly neighbor's house, bought with the modest inheritance from my grandmother. I had painted it myself, fixed broken steps, and rented it out. That became 2 properties, then 3. I had invested in a catering business with a church friend, a venture that flourished beyond expectation. Every penny I earned, I saved. I lived modestly, driving the same car for years, clipping coupons, making do. I was rich. Secretly, quietly, astonishingly rich. The plan had always been to leave it to Andrew, a final gift after my passing. I had pictured him grieving but comforted by the inheritance that would secure his future. But the vision crumbled as I held the will in my hand that night. His name, written elegantly as sole beneficiary, mocked me. I reached into the nightstand for scissors, the same pair I had once used to cut his hair, to trim coupons, to wrap his Christmas gifts. Slowly, deliberately, I cut the will into shreds, each snip a release. By the time I finished, my lap was filled with fragments, and I felt lighter. The next morning, I called Clara Williams, my oldest friend and my attorney. Clara had known me since nursing school, back when we were young women with big dreams. "Margaret, honey, you okay?" she asked, her voice warm with concern. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be. Can you come over? I need to rewrite my will." There was a pause. This about Andrew and the wedding? You heard. Everyone's heard. Victoria was bragging about it at the country club. Said she convinced Andrew to uninvite you. The ice in my veins hardened. Bragging. She had been bragging about discarding me. "Bring the paperwork, Clara," I said firmly. "I know exactly who deserves my life's work, and it's not my son." Clara arrived that afternoon with her briefcase and a grave expression. "You sure about this?" "Absolutely," I replied, sliding a legal pad across the table. "Everything goes to Grace Haven, the women's shelter downtown. They take in elderly women abandoned by their families. Women like me." Clara's pen scratched across the page as we went line by line: properties, investments, business shares, even the cash tucked away in my closet. Her brows rose higher with each figure. Margaret, this is over $2 million. Every penny, I said. And now it will go to women who deserve dignity. I dictated a letter to the shelter director, explaining my gift. These women remind me of myself. They gave everything to their families, only to be discarded. Please use this money to give them what their own children would not. Then I wrote another letter, one for Andrew. Short, sharp, final. Andrew, I raised you with love and sacrifice. I saved every possible dollar to secure your inheritance. But then you told me I was too embarrassing for your wedding. So now you get nothing. Not a dollar of the fortune you never knew existed. I hope your perfect wedding was worth losing your mother. Goodbye forever. The morning of the wedding dawned crisp and bright. A sky so clear it felt as though nothing ugly could possibly hide beneath it. I rose slowly, careful with my aching body, and went to my wardrobe. For this day, I would not dress as the fragile patient they had tried to reduce me to. No, I would dress as the woman I truly was, dignified, resilient, unbroken. I chose a navy blue dress with pearl details at the collar, a dress I had kept for occasions that mattered. My scarf was silk, deep burgundy with golden threads woven through it, pinned with my mother's cameo brooch. I applied a touch of lipstick, steadying my hand until the color brightened my pale lips. When I studied my reflection, I did not see a woman to be hidden away. I saw a mother, a survivor, and a woman who belonged wherever she chose to stand. Clara arrived just after noon, her car waiting in the driveway. She stepped out, her purse clutched firmly against her side, the manila envelope tucked securely within. You ready for this? She asked, her eyes searching mine. I've been ready my whole life, I said, smoothing the folds of my dress. The venue, Riverside Gardens, was breathtaking. White roses bloomed along the path, their fragrance mingling with the crisp air. String lights hung from the trees, glistening like stars waiting for dusk. Guests in designer suits and glittering gowns clustered near the entrance, sipping champagne, laughing too loudly. The entire place radiated money, polish, and performance. I walked in quietly unnoticed, and chose a seat near the back. No one turned their head to acknowledge me. That was fine. I hadn't come for their approval. When Andrew appeared at the altar, tall and composed in his tuxedo, my heart clenched with a mix of pride and sorrow. He looked every inch the successful man he had worked so hard to portray. And then Victoria appeared, floating down the aisle like a vision, her dress gleaming white, her smile perfectly timed for every camera angle. Together, they looked flawless. The ceremony unfolded like something scripted for a glossy magazine spread. Vows of love, promises of forever, polished smiles. Victoria dabbed at her eyes without smudging her makeup. Andrew gazed at her with rehearsed devotion. Guests sighed in admiration, the photographer snapping endlessly. When they sealed it with a kiss, the applause roared. Everyone rose, clapping and cheering, basking in the glow of perfection. They turned to walk down the aisle, faces radiant. For a moment, Andrew's eyes swept the crowd. And then he saw me. His expression faltered, surprise then panic, but it was too late. The ceremony was over. The photographs were already being taken. His perfect day had already been touched by my presence. I remained seated, calm, composed. He looked away quickly, trying to pretend it hadn't shaken him. The reception began in the gardens near a fountain strung with more lights. Waiters floated by with trays of champagne. Guests posed for photos. Laughter bubbled through the air. Andrew and Victoria stood at the center of it all, radiant as people lined up to congratulate them. That was when Clara moved. With steady steps, she approached the couple, offering warm congratulations. Then she handed Andrew the manila envelope. "This is from your mother," she said gently, before turning and walking away. I watched from my seat as Andrew frowned, tearing the envelope open. He expected, I'm sure, some sentimental blessing, perhaps even a check. Instead, his face drained of color as he scanned the first page. His hands trembled. He flipped through the documents quickly, eyes widening in disbelief. His lips moved soundlessly, reading line after line that erased his name from everything he thought he was owed. Victoria leaned in, snatching the papers from him. Her expression twisted as she read, her voice sharp and cutting across the hum of the crowd. What is this? What does this mean? Andrew stammered, unable to answer. His hands clutched the letter, the one addressed to him. He read it once, then again, and again, as though repetition might change the words. Victoria's face turned red with fury. She was rich, she hissed, her voice rising. Your mother was a millionaire, and you let her disinherit you because you were embarrassed by her headscarf? Guests began to turn their heads. Phones came out, recording. Murmurs swept through the crowd like wildfire. I didn't know, Andrew whispered hoarsely. She never told me. You never asked, I whispered from my seat, though he couldn't hear me. Victoria's fury boiled over. She threw her bouquet to the ground, her polished mask slipping. You threw away millions because you were ashamed of your own mother. Do you realize what you've done? By now the reception had stilled. Every guest was watching. The photographer, confused, kept snapping pictures, capturing the collapse of Andrew's carefully curated life in real time. Andrew's eyes darted frantically, searching the crowd. For me. And when his gaze finally found mine, I did not look away. I let him see the calm in my face, the finality in my eyes. Then, before the whispers could become shouts, I rose quietly and slipped out through the garden gate. Clara found me in the parking lot, sitting in her car with my hands folded neatly in my lap. How do you feel? She asked softly. Free, I said. And I meant it. As we drove away, I could imagine the chaos unraveling behind us. The whispers, the accusations, the rage. Victoria's perfect day was in ruins. And Andrew's triumph had been shattered in front of everyone whose opinion he cared about. By evening, the story had already spread. Social media buzzed with headlines. Mother disinherits son at wedding after being uninvited. Pictures of Andrew's pale face and Victoria's furious shouting circulated online. Their humiliation had gone viral. But the one twist the world never learned was this. I wasn't dying anymore. The experimental treatment had worked. My latest scans were clear. The cancer was gone. I was going to live. I let Andrew believe otherwise. Let him think his cruelty had been my last memory of him. Let him carry that guilt forever. 2 weeks later, I packed my belongings into a small moving van and left town. I settled in a quiet coastal village where no one knew my story, where the salt air smelled of freedom and the ocean sang me to sleep. I rented a cottage with a garden where tomatoes grew in neat rows. I volunteered at the animal shelter, made friends who valued kindness over appearances, and read books in the sunlight. For the first time in decades, I lived for myself. Andrew's marriage lasted just 4 months. Victoria left him the moment she realized he had nothing, taking half of what little he had left. He tried to contest the will, but Clara had written it airtight. He wrote letters to Grace Haven, begging them to reconsider. They ignored him, as I had instructed. Now he lives in a studio apartment, working a job far below the life he had envisioned. Victoria is engaged again, to someone with an actual trust fund this time. Do I think about him? Sometimes. I wonder if he replays the words he said to me that afternoon. Too ugly for the wedding. I wonder if he understands what those words cost him. But mostly, I don't think of him at all. I think of the women at Grace Haven, living with dignity, comfort, and safety because of the fortune I left them. I think of the peace I have now, sipping tea on my porch as the sun sets over the sea. The truth is, Andrew did me a favor. By discarding me, he freed me. He showed me who he truly was, and in doing so, he gave me permission to stop wasting my love on someone who didn't deserve it. And now, every morning, I wake not with sorrow but with gratitude, for second chances, for peace, for the wealth of a life lived on my own terms. I am Margaret. I am not invisible. I am not unwanted. And I am finally, truly free.